Swimmer 97654. Everybody wants to know, are you going to swim in college or not? And if so, where?
Yes, I am swimming in college.
Okay, do you know where?
I am still I
Welcome to Social Kick. We got the full crew: Dr. John Mullen, Luke Paddington, and Katie Grimes. What's going on, Katie?
What's up? How are you guys?
We're doing good. All right, we ask our audience some questions always to find out what they want to know from the great Katie Grimes. And this one's from Tin Ching 21. Says, "What's your favorite dinosaur?"
My favorite dinosaur? Um, the one that has like the really long neck. That's a herbivore. I know that. I couldn't tell you the name though. I know it's just like the
Is that the
typical.
Brontosaurus?
I don't know. I don't even know.
I think it's a Brontosaurus, a long neck. We'll call it the giraffe
Yeah.
of dinosaurs. What about your
That's
favorite
sick.
dryland exercise?
Anything like ab oriented is usually one of my favorites. Like we used to use the ab wheel all the time, and I don't know if you've ever tried that before, but it's a butt kicker. Like it's really hard, but that's probably one of my favorites.
Yeah, I used to pride myself on being one that could do the ab wheel out from standing up.
Yeah.
Give the
Wow,
floor a
that's
kiss.
hard.
Yeah,
Come back up.
yeah, dangerous for the lower back, but
Yeah, for sure.
all right, what's the best pool that you've ever trained or raced in?
It was actually funny when we were in Paris for the Olympics. One of the training pools that they had set up for us was the 1924 Olympic pool.
Wow.
And it was so cool, like top pool I ever swam in, I think, just because it kind of had like that old-fashioned design to it. The roof could retract, so there was natural light in the pool. And it was just like a total vibe, and I think it was like super like meditative, like because the competition pool at the Olympics was so crowded, and to have that little escape was super nice. And so yeah, that's got to be like my favorite for sure.
What's the best ocean or river you've trained or raced in?
Oh, definitely the Seine. No, I'm just kidding.
Super
We went
clean.
to
Would you drink it?
yeah. We went to Seychelles, South Africa for a World Junior trip one time, and that was really cool. Like, I'm talking, you could see the bottom like 10 feet deep. It was really cool.
Nice.
I was a little scared of sharks in that one, but it was cool for sure.
Gosh, how many passport stamps do you think you have at this point? Good grief.
Well, I didn't start traveling internationally until Tokyo. That was like my first ever anything.
Wow.
Right.
So, I mean, like since then, gosh, I don't know. I had to get a new passport because I think when you're under like 21 or something, you have to get it.
Oh, is it like a driver's
Yeah.
license where like they turn it sideways or something? Is the, like the you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Where
they
it's like, oh, well,
definitely,
we know right
yeah.
away that you're not of legal age. Do they do that with passports too?
I don't think so, but I know you have to get them your picture redone like more regularly. So I asked if I could keep my old one just because it's like memories, you know. So
Sure.
yeah.
To me, my favorite place I've done open water is Lake Tahoe because it's crystal clear. There are no animals gonna bite me. I can drink the water if I had to. And it's cold. I operate really well with like 58 degrees, 60 degrees with no wetsuit. What about you, Katie? Are you like a cool engine operator, or do you like the water like in the 60s, 70s? What are you?
Definitely warmer water for racing for sure. Because we've done wetsuit races and we've done races that have just been right on the cusp. So that's like 69, 70 degrees without a wetsuit on is awful for me. Like I just tense up, can't feel anything. So those are pretty hard, but for training, definitely cold water for sure.
Hey, I got a question about the open water stuff. How come the leg skins are allowed in open water swimming?
I think because that's a really good question. I think it's just because of like the flotation, like better circulation. Obviously, like all the benefits you would have for it in the pool, but I don't know why they allow it in open water and not the pool. That's a good question. We should ask someone about that.
I'm trying to ask the expert.
Well,
She never
I've
said she's an expert.
I'm trying to
I've
ask
never,
a world bronze
yeah.
medalist about this, please. Yes.
I've never questioned it before. I don't know. I feel like probably has something to do with just the duration of the event, I'm sure, you know.
Wouldn't you want that in the pool though? I mean, maybe not for breaststroke.
It's actually really comfortable. Like I get a super big size, so it's not super tight on my shoulders. And I think it's fairly comfortable. Like I like having the flotation for my legs and everything, so maybe that would help me on breaststroke, but yeah, I don't know.
You mentioned being scared of sharks. Have you had any interesting animal encounters with any of your open water swims?
I, knock on wood, haven't, but I have, like, when we do our open water nationals it's called Nathan Benderson Park. It's in Florida, and I know there's a saying that if you want to know if a body of water has an alligator in it in Florida, just check to see if it's wet. And so I'm always scared to do open water in Florida, but especially this one venue that we have our nationals at, because it is a rowing venue. And so it's not usually like made for swimming, I guess, but they pull out alligators if they're over 4 feet. And I was like, well, what if it's like under 4 feet? You leave
3
it in
feet,
there?
11 inches.
Yeah, exactly. But there have been times where we've been swimming in there and I've seen like a turtle, like a massive turtle, and I just see its head kind of like sticking out of the water, and I think it's a snake. And so I get like super freaked out, and then I'm like, oh, it's just a turtle. But still, like, snapping turtles are pretty scary too, you know, so I don't know.
Here's my quandrum with turtles in the open water. So I used to surf a lot, and so I'd be paddling and I'd see turtles, and to me I was like, where there's lots of turtles, does that mean there are no sharks, or does that mean there's lots of food so sharks will come?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
You never know what side of the equation you're on, for sure.
Do you miss we have one open water race where I'm from in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, and it's like everybody sets off and you can do a 500, 1,000, a 3K or 5K. Do you wish that internationally there were more different events, either shorter or, not the 25K, but something longer? Do you wish there's more variety?
I do wish there was more variety. I think it would probably help draw more people to the sport for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, at the Olympics, there was only the 10K. And I think the open water relay is something that could be really exciting. Especially for the viewers, because 2 hours is a lot to watch one swimmer do their thing. But if it's a 4x1500, I think that's really cool. But yeah, more variety for sure. Like maybe even a 2K, like 2K, 5K, 10K could be really cool. But the open water junior side of it does a really good job because they had so many events this past competition. They had like a 3K knockout, a 7.5K, a 5K, like all of it. So I think that's pretty cool and exciting for everyone involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the junior scene has really improved quite a bit, especially from when we used to swim, and they have these shorter distances. But how about the idea of like having actual swimming events like off a dock? So like a tuner fly off a dock, straight swim.
I don't know about that one because so many people are underwater dominant that like.
Yeah, let's see
I
swimming.
don't know. Yeah, that's true. We could see who's a better swimmer, but that could get a little dangerous probably. I can't imagine a 400 IM, like no churns, no anything. Like
no wing lines, nothing. Yeah, that'd be.
Yeah, but how cool would it have been in Paris though? Because you had all those bridges in the Seine. I mean, besides the fact that you had the current dynamic going one way versus the other, which is crazy to watch. But if you had a relay from like point to point, one bridge to the next bridge, that would have been so awesome. Because I got out there and watched the triathlon mixed team relay, which was in a similar spot to the open water venue start, right? And there's like they were packed all the way around, but it was so cool because it was a lot of laps. And then they had a relay. It was a 4-team relay, mixed gender. And it was just a lot of the you got to see a lot more of the dynamics because it was shorter distances, people could go harder, but like just the back and forth was so cool in a venue like that. And open water swimming, I feel like that could do a lot for just generating some hype and buzz and excitement about the sport.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. Like, as bad as that venue was in Paris, it was really cool to watch because you could kind of see like up and down the lap and everything, and it was a really cool venue for spectators for sure. Um, and swimming in it was like it was interesting, but I'm really happy we got to do it. I'm really happy it didn't get canceled.
Sure.
But it was definitely a unique experience for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to give kudos to Rowdy. I mean, for 2 hours he commented on that 10K, and I don't know what he talks about, but he kept talking for 2 hours. But what surprised me is that Rowdy was a commentator, because no offense to Rowdy, but pool swimming and open water swimming, I coach open water swimming. It's very different, and to comment on it, he did an amazing job. How different are the two sports for you from your tactical? I mean, it's besides obviously the training for it. What are you looking for in a commentator in race tactics to know about spotting and about pacing and about technique for an hour and 55-minute race?
Yeah, that's a really good
Yeah.
question. I think that not a lot of people have much experience in the sport, but watching it is one thing, and then doing it and competing in it is another. But I agree with you. I think he did a really good job sustaining the audience on that race. But I think one thing that people watching it might not understand as much is, like you said, the tactics of it and just the strategy. And just because they're leading on the first lap doesn't mean they're gonna win it. It's a long race, and there's lots that goes into it. Like, I know that in Paris, it was a little bit of a different situation. The leaders just kind of got off, made a break for it, and that's what the result was. But it's usually a much more fluid race, like lots going on, lots changing. And I think that's something that's really cool because it could be someone, in the middle of the pack, way far back, that ends up winning it. And the camera tends to focus on whoever is in the lead when most of the race is going on, like, in the pack behind it. So I think that's another cool thing is, like, there's so much going on outside of the screen that you don't see.
I agreed.
Mhm.
Katie, I see you as I don't know if do you see yourself as a pool swimmer who swims open water, or open water swimmer who swims pool? And why don't more swimmers do the crossover? I mean, right now I can think of maybe three, like who
Mhm.
on the male and female side, who are elite pool swimmers and elite open water swimmers. Like
Mhm.
why don't people do more? And do you see yourself as an open water swimmer who does pool, or vice versa, or both?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say I see myself more as a pool swimmer who does open water. Probably just because there's a lot more focus on that for me.
Mhm.
And there's a lot more competitions with pool and everything like that. So I would say pool's usually more at the forefront of my mind, but that's a really good question. A lot of
Yeah.
athletes I think could do both, but the commitment and just the choice to is like a whole nother step.
Mhm.
And I think that not a lot of coaches. I'm very fortunate to have Coach Ron, who is super educated in both. Like, he's been doing both for a really long time, and he's a strong supporter of us to try both. And I think having a coach that thinks that way is super beneficial. And I don't think I would do both if it wasn't for him. Because like I said, I do love pool swimming. If I could choose, like, if I had to choose one over the other, it would definitely be pool.
Yeah.
Um, and I have so much respect for the athletes that do both at such a high level. Like, we saw Greg, this last Olympics,
Yeah.
do both. There was quite a few athletes, that over the past years that have done both really well, like Haley Anderson and Ashley Twitchell. But I think it's something athletes could do. I think it's just the lack of information, the lack of opportunity to try it is probably what's keeping
Yeah.
people from doing it.
Also, I didn't do it because I was, I guess, frankly scared, or I think I'd be bored, or I was a fifth day freestyler, but I ended up loving the Trans Tahoe. You know, Brian, an elite fifth day freestyler, your race is what, 5 hours long, Brian? Your half Ironmans. You know, Tony Irvin just swam around Manhattan this weekend.
Mhm.
Question for all of us: what swimmers
Mhm.
right now would do well in open water? I mean, Dan Whiffen tried it, and he's like, "That was my first and last race ever." You know, what races now?
Mhm.
Because you don't have to just be fast. You have to be, I don't know, it's a different mindset to be. What swimmers do you think would work well in open water who are doing well in the pool right now? A question for all of us. John, you go first. Who do you think?
I'll take the easy one. Let's say Katie Ledecky. I heard she's okay at distance swimming, right? I'll take the layup.
Yeah, but I think that's totally different, Luke, because you're
No.
talking about like crossing over between like two different sports and aerobic
Yeah.
systems and everything. But like the people who are going to be really elite at open water swimming are elite open or are elite distance pool swimmers, or like mid distance at least. So I think
Mhm.
those are kind of different things. Like, so yeah, there's a long list of elite pool swimmers who could be really good at open water. They just like don't go into it. Bobby Fink, Katie, like, I mean, some of them may have dabbled in it here and there. Maybe they do like a couple, team goes out, hey, we're going to go swim open water, like do a couple training sessions a year, but they like TBD if they race it or not. I think you see that a
Mhm.
lot, but yeah, it's maybe just like it's another thing to add to the calendar. It's a different dynamic that you have to consider. I was listening to a talk that you gave, maybe it was an interview or something, where we were talking about like the differences between the two, and you, Katie, were talking about like, well, I mean, yeah, you have to think about feeding, you have to think about race strategy, there's temperature conditions, there's like water conditions in the venue,
Mhm.
weather, and then there's pack dynamics too, and all of those things are a lot of things that you don't have to consider when you're pool racing, which is I think
Mhm.
would make it a lot of fun. And that for me personally, transitioning from being a pool sprinter to racing marathons and Ironman stuff is fun, because it's just like new things that you get to discover, new things that you get to kind of hone in on. Okay, what's my nutrition strategy? How do I train
Mhm.
for? How do I optimize my aerodynamics? I think that would be a lot of fun about what you get to do with this like dual sport life that you live.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, we talked about alligators in the water and sharks and turtles, but all the talk was about other things in the Seine. Now, tell me the worst thing you saw in the Seine, and please don't tell me it's poop.
um, the worst thing I saw was definitely the current. My gosh, I sometimes think about it and just wonder how I made it out of that race, just because this is kind of a funny story. We only got to practice in it the day before because all the training sessions kept getting canceled due to the water quality, and it kept raining, and every time it rained, the sewage would just flow into the river. So it kept postponing it, and so the day that we finally got to practice in it and actually feel it out, my coach was like, "I don't want you putting your head in the water. I just want you to put fins on, bring a kickboard out there, and just like feel the current." And I was like,
A social
"Okay."
kick in the send?
Yeah, it was a social kick. Me and Brian and Ivan all did the same thing. We just put our fins on, brought our kickboard out there, and going out, like starting is with the current, and then coming back
Yeah.
is against it. So we're like, we have our fins, we have our kickboard, we're just like kicking, going super fast down this river. And the minute we hit that buoy, it was like, oh my gosh, I felt like I was Tokyo drifting, just because it like whipped you around, because it was under a bridge, that first churn buoy. So all the water would just like flow even faster and channel into that bridge, and it just whipped you around, and I was swimming to go like at a 90-degree angle off that churn. I had to make like a complete 180 and start swimming back up towards the start, just to not be like pushed further back down the river. And oh my gosh, we had to ended up having to get pulled out by one of the safety boats because we couldn't do it. We were like holding on to the cord of the buoy. Like I was hanging on to Mariah's foot, she was hanging on to Ivan's foot, and we're just like dangling there waiting for someone to come and get us because oh my gosh, it was awful. But it was much easier to swim in it for sure. Kicking was pretty hard. Um, but I would say that was like the hardest um characteristic of that entire venue just
Yeah.
because to be honest, I didn't think about the water quality once while I was racing until I swallowed a big gulp of water and I was like oh, but then I was like I
Keep it
like
going.
forgot about it. Yeah.
Tastes
I
like
had
E.
to
coli.
Junkie.
Yeah.
Probiotics.
Yeah, didn't see anything, didn't see any fish, didn't see, trash or anything like that, but to be fair, I couldn't see. It was just pretty murky. But I didn't want to look up what kind of species lived in the Seine if there were any. But Ivan Puskevich did, and I asked him not to tell me before my race. So after the race, he told me that he looked it up and there's 11 different types of eel that
Yep.
live in the Seine. And I was like, what? That just freaked me out. I was like, thank goodness I'm done. But yeah.
It's a delicacy. No. So wait. The two guys who medaled from Hungary, they trained in the Danube beforehand, to get used to the river. You're in Vegas. You're telling me you didn't go to Mandalay Bay Hotel and swim in the lazy river with Ron? What's going on? That's the
Well,
best lazy river you can go to.
I know. I wanted to. We have this water park here called Cowabunga Bay or something like that, and I knew they had a lazy river because that's where we used to do our swimathon for Sandpipers. We would swim in the lazy river and raise money for our team. So I was like thinking back to that and I was like, what a smart opportunity. Like let's turn the current on, have me swim up
Yeah.
against it and just like put on an open water suit and yeah. But that ended up not working out. So I was pretty bummed, but because I hadn't had any experience with the current before, but yeah, it was different.
Hey, did you learn anything from the women's triathlon? Flora Duffy from Bermuda let out the women's swim in the triathlon, and she was like way slammed up against the sides, and like everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, she's taking a giant detour around." But the dynamics of that are a little bit different. It was more strung out and maybe like a little bit less pack clustered. And when I was watching the open water for Paris that you were in, it was like more clustered in packs. So I was just curious if like you were watching some of the other events happening in triathlon to kind of learn about river currents if you weren't able to get in and swim before that much.
Yeah, for sure. We were definitely taking all the resources we could. And one of those being just watching how the triathlons panned out. And yeah, we noticed that they were swimming right up against the wall, up against the current. And according to the flow rates, like that is where it was the least harmful. So it made it really tricky because going up against the current, you couldn't draft really because everyone had to be in a single file line where sometimes it will be like 3 in a row, like 2 in a row, something like that. But it was so bad you couldn't even pass. Like you couldn't even go too wide for even a second because the current was just so much harder the further you were away from the wall. And also it was kind of dangerous too. We were getting so close to the wall and there were vines that were hanging down and drooping into the water that were covered in thorns. And a lot of the athletes had like a ton of scrapes on their arms from the thorns, but then for the men's race they had cut them all down because they realized after the women race they're like, oh, yeah, that's gonna be an issue. No, I'm just kidding, but yeah, so that was interesting.
Okay.
And yeah, got scraped up a little bit, and it was just it didn't work the way you think it would. You would think that taking the straightest line would be fastest, but adding like all those extra meters to take that little zigzag path was actually the fastest way. And I think that's something Sharon did really well. She knew what to do right off the bat and picked her line, stuck to it, and everyone kind of followed suit. So yeah, it was interesting to watch for sure.
I'm getting old, so there are a couple of things I can't remember. Like I can't remember when last we spoke so much open water. That's awesome. But let's go now to the pool that we all know. And you also, I can't remember when last a swimmer qualified for the Olympics before attending the US Olympic trials in swimming, in pool swimming. So you did that obviously with your bronze medal in the 10K. But what was that like approaching and preparing for the US Olympic trials, knowing that you already are an Olympian for the second time before the age of 18? And now what was your mindset going into that versus your mindset when you were going for the Tokyo trials?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say that I felt all the pressure I would feel even if I hadn't qualified for the team prior. I really have like a split mentality for both, and I knew that this past summer I wanted to qualify in both, and just because I had made the team in open water wasn't going to help me at all in the pool trials. So I didn't think about that really much at all, just because, you know, swimming the 400 IM, swimming the 1500 is like, it's not going to help me qualify if in the back of my head I'm telling myself, okay, well, don't worry, I've already made the team. Like it didn't like work like that for me. I wish it did give me a little more peace of mind during that competition, but I just knew that this was like a separate animal that I had to tackle. Um, and I think that compared to the trials for Tokyo, it was similar a little bit in a way where I felt like I had to prove myself still, and I felt like there's just something that I just wanted to show everybody like how hard I've been working, and like what the past months of training had been like for me. And I think that it was very similar to Tokyo in that way, where I knew I could do something, and it didn't work out the way I thought it would in Tokyo at all. So my mindset kind of shifted prior to me making the team in the 800, just because by that point in the meet, I was like dropped everything. I just dropped everything and was just swimming free. And at the trials in India, it was just like kind of the opposite. I felt like I had this weight on me, and I felt like I wanted to prove to myself, like, first and foremost, that I could do it. So yeah, it was very different, and I don't think that having had made the team a year before, like, really did anything for me, just because, or in the pool at least, just because it's just completely different.
Yeah, at trials, we were obviously there watching, and certain athletes have so many events, and then you're scratching some, you're doing some, and you're one of those athletes. And it was like, wow, she's going for the two back. Oh, she's scratching the 800. I guess, was this kind of always the game plan, or was it very much within the meet? You and I assume Ron, your coach, were kind of deciding this.
Yeah, it was definitely not something that we hadn't thought about before we got there. My backstroke in training had been really good. I mean, my prime stroke is backstroke. I'm really fond of the 200 backstroke. I compete that race like when we do um like our championship short course meets and everything like that. I race it sometimes a pro series. And so I really like it. It's just like a fun race for me. Um and when we got there and I swam it, the prelims, I was like, "Oh, okay, like that was pretty good." So Coach Ron and I were talking, and we were like talking about the schedule at the Olympics, and the lineup for the 800 was gonna kind of conflict with open water and the 400 IM. And so I was like, I didn't want to say to him, what do you think about scratching the 800? But I knew we were both kind of thinking the same thing. We just wanted to take a risk with the 200 back and see how my semifinal went first before we made any final decisions. And I think I won a best time at semifinals. I can't remember, but we were like, oh, okay, this is like going good. Let's just, scratch the 800 and try for the backstroke because we had nothing to lose. And I have no regrets doing that. I think it was really fun to compete at that level with those girls in the backstroke. And I didn't know if I was gonna do super well in 800, so I just wanted to test the waters a little bit.
I'm wondering how much of that, like, strategy when it comes to the
Mhm.
meet schedule stems from a couple years ago at Worlds. You win a silver medal in the 400 IM, almost break Katie
Mhm.
Hoff's American record, and then the next morning, I think, you had the 1500 prelim,
Mhm.
and didn't go great. And so it was like that. But I not the time that I've also had a chance to ask you a question in person. I asked you what the hardest race in swimming was, and you said the 400 IM. And so,
Mhm.
I was just like, oh man, I think that would be absolutely brutal. And yet, like, I can't even imagine the amount of meters that you swim throughout
Mhm.
a meet. But and so I think it'd be easy for us to assume, okay, well, distance swimmers, like, they're used to going longer distances, they're used to doing
Mhm.
lots of races. You've even mentioned, like, oh yeah, I've done triples that were really hard in training. So sure,
Mhm.
like, okay, what's one 400 IM? Like, you should be able to back it up and do a elite 1500. But I mean, it
Mhm.
is really hard to do. So uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I can imagine. Was that experience informative or like transformative for you guys at all to go, okay, maybe that is like pretty difficult to back up because my body
Mhm.
just doesn't respond the way to be ready for like that longer distance the next day?
Yeah, 100%. Like that whole experience was something that we learned from definitely, but I going into that, like going into the whole Olympics in general, um, my coach told me, he's like, "Hey, just to let you know, like this is gonna be completely different than Tokyo." And I was like, "Okay." I didn't know like what he meant by that until I understood what he meant by that. Because it was just so much different and not only was I racing completely different events, like I remember exactly how I felt walking out on the deck for my 800 in Tokyo, and there was no one in the stands except for other athletes, but I felt like it was a packed crowd. I felt like my adrenaline was through the roof and like this was the biggest moment of my life, and it was. But going into Paris, I felt like, okay, I did that then, like I can do this now. And I kind of used my experience from Tokyo to help visualize what it would be like for my races there. And it was completely different. Like walking out on the pool deck with a full crowd, racing a different event. I was like, holy crap. I was like on a different level. Just freaking out, like kind of freaking out, but like also really excited. And I think you know knowing I was gonna have that double and knowing that it was gonna be that kind of turnaround, I did my best to prepare for that. We did our best for sure, like scheduling everything out, writing everything down, being timely with everything. um but the Olympics, like there's so many things like media, drug testing, bus back to the or actually we had a hotel which was really nice for us athletes to stay at. That was like a walk to the pool. But just like working all those little things into the schedule, I knew it was going to be a challenge. But especially after the 400 IM, like trying to go to bed that night was extremely difficult. I tried to prepare myself knowing that like, okay, I'm gonna be amped up, like I'm gonna have gone through a lot, I'm probably gonna be excited, and I'm gonna need to go to bed like right away because I have another race. And it just didn't go well. It did not go to my plan. And that prelims of the 1500 was super disappointing for me just because I I been training so good. I've been training really well up until trials. Um, and to just kind of like get that result, I was super disappointed because not only was I disappointed with my 400 IM, my 1500 was also bad. So I just felt like I was walking away with having competed better at in-season meets. Like both my
Yeah.
times in the 400 IM and the 1500 had been faster at like I don't know, like a swim meet of champions in the middle of the season. And I was just like, it just wasn't the result that I wanted. It wasn't the result that I worked for either. And I think that, you know, it was like a mutual understanding between me and my coach that like we did everything we could. There's no regrets, like there's nothing we can change. And um like mostly dealing with like the embarrassment on my half was like just feeling bad that I like let him down and everything. And like I think it was like really good to have that moment there of just like knowing that it happened for a reason, because I think that for some reason for me, I always have to have like that little like edge inside of me that wants more. And I think that was like a perfect way, a perfect Olympics to like keep me going, keep me excited, keep me happy, because I took away so many better experiences from that than just like a good time. Um and so yeah, and so that's a long answer to your question, but yeah.
I just wanted to follow up on that. So, like, what do you think the answer is, though, to what do you do going forward? Is that like, okay, well, you know, need to learn about ways that I can better improve the turnaround? Is it like sleep
Mhm.
habits, like consideration of the caffeine intake or whatever? I don't know. You know, is
Mhm.
it like, or is the takeaway, all right, you know, some schedules maybe just aren't going to
Mhm.
work. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that it's definitely like a scheduling thing, and kind of looking at like, okay, my 2 best events at the time, like, had to be the sessions right after each other, and I think we could have looked at that, you know, like I said, we knew what we were dealing with, but I think moving forward, we definitely know that maybe that's not something I can do. Um, I can do it, but I can't do it how I want to do it. And I think I definitely wanna change the events that I'm swimming. I'm really excited about other events, and I'm open to trying new things and working towards different things in training to make sure I don't have that conflict again. But I'm not the only athlete that has to do that. There's
Right.
a ton of athletes on that team that are able to do that back to back. Whether it's a relay at night and then they wake up and they have their prelims of a 100 fly or 200 fly or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Um,
imagine how unfair it
yeah.
is for all the 50 freestyle or 200 breaststrokers like Kate Douglas. I mean,
Mhm.
when they put
Yeah.
those races back to back, that's so unfair for those people.
Yeah. Which is true. I mean, like, there's athletes that do it, and I think that's super respectable just because I know how hard that is to do. And so, yeah, it's really cool to see other athletes do that.
I have the 1500 and 400. We're talking about how different they are as well. Some
Mhm.
athletes swim the mile eyes closed, just focus on not feeling the pain and working through, and just it's like automatic pilot for them. And I don't think you can do that in a 400 IM. I think you have to be thinking, you have to be aware, you have
Mhm.
to be getting ready what's next, and pacing. So it's less automatic pilot. Is that the case for you? How do you approach swimming, both like with your eyes or your mindset, or and does, when you're in a certain mindset, does that normally mean you're gonna have a good race? Like, okay, I know I'm gonna have a good race because I wasn't distracted. I wasn't thinking about the lane next to me. Talk about how you are in both races. How do you approach it?
Yeah, I would say my best 400 IMs that I've had, or best races in general, I don't feel anything. Like, it's zero pain, zero thinking, like, just floating on top of the water, and I have a great time. Like, usually that's
Oh.
how it goes. Um, but there are times where I've really had to push through it. like especially in season, I really push through it, like especially the 1500 and the 800, where I have to be consciously reapplying the effort, consciously, keeping my kick constant and things like that. And I end up having a good time as well. So it varies for me, just depending on where I'm at in training. But the 400 IM, most typically I have to be knowing like, okay, this, and this, I have to do this. I have to do this here, this there. But that's all like prior to the race. But once I start racing, it's like I've already nailed it down mentally. So I know it's going to be applied physically for me. But that's more like at an end of the season race
Yeah.
after, going through all the trial and error of racing it in season and in practice as well. Where I can kind of like let my body take over. But there are times where, especially in practice, like I have to be constantly reminding me like, okay, finish your kick on breaststroke, finish your kick on breaststroke, or just like keeping my hips up and things like that. But by the time I get to the big race, it's already nailed down in my head usually.
Yeah, you mentioned the 4 a.m. and being disappointed in that race as well.
Mhm.
You know, at face value, you see, oh, silver medal, yeah, 4:33, a little off your best, but most people would
Mhm.
probably say, hey, she should be pretty happy with that. So I guess what were
Mhm.
the things you were disappointed other than adding time? Was it that execution now that you've had a
Mhm.
few, like you said, some time to reflect and look back at it?
Yeah, I would say, the time was the one thing that I was really upset with just because I've had that goal of going under 4:30 for so long, and I've gotten close to the American record a couple of times, and I think it's just, like, looming over me, like, I just feel like I know I'm gonna get it when I'm not even thinking about trying to get it, and it's gonna come naturally, but I think that, um, it's actually funny, I had a call with Katie Huff the day before my 400 IM, and we were just talking about everything, and she was just giving me advice of, like, you know, just what to do and how to feel and, like, what to think when I'm feeling this way or just advice, and, that was really helpful for me, just to kinda hear her and, like, have her support because she's just such a cool lady. Um, but I would say I was just disappointed because I felt like, even at trials, I just been feeling like I'm really, um, kind of not lucking out, but I'm, like, very fortunate to be doing the events that I'm doing right now because it's like I can make the team, right? I can make the team, but I'm not good enough to win it. And I think that's been like a block for me because I just feel like I'm kind of like in the middle of things internationally, and I'm not doing anything that's like, oh, top time in the world or, like breaking records. And I really want to get to that point where I'm breaking records, I'm setting top times in the world, like things like that, where I can feel like I'm actually like playing with the big guys, So I think that's something I really want to focus on this next quad is like doing events where I'm more like in the mix of it and having fun doing it. And I think I've kind of been struggling with that in the 1500. Just like finding my space in it because internationally it's so good right now. Um, and like I know I can make the team in it, but it's like one of those things where I don't know if I can medal in it when it comes to the international. Well, I know I can medal in it. It's just like whether or not I have it in me that day, and that sounds really lame to say because
No.
you work so hard for things like that and like you don't want it to come down to that day, but sometimes it's like, okay, what schedule am I gonna have? How is this gonna work out kind of thing.
Um, the 1500 I hated doing the 1500 because you go out with the pack and after about 200 you're exhausted and you're like, crap, I have 1300 more to go. And I hated that feeling. And I remember Leah Smith saying if she felt pain before the 400, she knows it was over. She knows she couldn't handle it. But if she could get to the 400, then she could handle that pain and continue to the end. What are you doing? Give me an example mentally, and then physically of the work that you're putting in to be able to get to where you want to be in a 1500, because you got to put the work in here, like you said, you're on Ron and the mental state and the words that Katie told you off. And also give me an example of a set that like, I did that, I'm ready, I'm ready for the 1500.
Yeah, well, in practice we'll even do 1500s for time, and I think that's something that I always go back to at a competition, is thinking about it, because like you said, the duration of it is one thing, but it's the effort that has to be applied over that long period of time. And so doing that in practice, oh my gosh, there's so many things we do in practice that I constantly use as a reminder when it comes to a swim meet. One of those being the 1500 for time, or just 400s for time, or 800s for time. Or we'll do 10 150s max effort, or 15 200s max effort, or 30 100s max effort, 10 300s max effort. So like things like that, I just go back to know I have the endurance to do it. Because like you said, it's like you want to be confident going into it, knowing you can do it. Because it's gonna hurt like really bad. But I almost approached it like I'm doing an 800 freestyle, because I need that front end speed, and I need that that get out speed that I lack sometimes. So I think treating it like it's an 800 can help me sometimes.
Well, Sandpiper has a reputation for some hard sets. So one of our audience members, BA2542, wants to know, what's the hardest Sandpiper set?
Oh my gosh.
Where to begin, right?
That's like the never ending question.
You're like, well, our warm-up is 1500s for time, and then we get into...
Do you think you're just like stroking Ron's ego every time too when this question comes up? He's like, ha 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 ha.
Like,
You thought that was the
which
hardest.
Which one she's gonna pick?
You think 15 times is hard. We're doing 16.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a good question. Well, we haven't done this in a while, but we sometimes will do 10 400s IM long course, like odds moderate, evens fast on a tight interval, and that one gets me for sure.
What's tight? What's a tight interval for you?
I think one time we went on 5:30, and that's like pretty good for practice. Like that, I know.
Yeah.
I remember like on the moderates, like barely making it, and then the fast, I was like getting some rest, and then like he ended up changing the interval, I think, when we were like halfway through, just because none of us were making it by the time it came to the moderates. But yeah, that's a hard one. What else do we do?
Do you think Ron just has like a tally where it's like amount of times the swimmers win and can do the set, amount of times Ron wins?
Yeah,
they can't do it, and he's like keeps a little
there's
tally.
not a lot of times, like there's not a lot of times where he has to adjust it for us. I will say, like, leading into trials, we all, well, not all of us, but a few of us in our training group, we have a small training group, it's like 12 of us, got pneumonia. We all got really sick, and it was like right before trials and right after our sea level training camp. So that like little period where we were home, he had to like adjust things. And I didn't know he was adjusting the practices until he told me. He's like, I just knew like I was gonna put you guys over the edge if we did this, how it was supposed to be written. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that. But so like that's one of the few times where he's like had to adjust things. But yeah, usually we just kind of do it, and like if we fail, it's like you have to keep on swimming kind of thing. But with my old coach, we used to have to do butterfly to catch up. And so say it was like a kick set and you didn't make the kick set, you would do butterfly until you were caught back up. And I just like think back to that. I'm like, oh, it's so clever. It's so good. But yeah.
Talking like a true distance swimmer. That's so good making us do butterfly to catch up.
Yeah.
Love it.
Mhm.
All right, Katie, we got a few rapid fire. We'll let you go.
Okay.
Olympic gold or world record?
Definitely Olympic gold.
Do you pee in the pool or the river?
Yes, but I drink so much water that if I got out every time to pee, I would have to be doing like makeup practices all the time. So I definitely
right.
do pee in the pool.
What's the song you're most likely to dance to?
Some of my friends and I kind of joke about, I don't know if you know this song, but do you know One Kiss by Dua Lipa?
Yeah.
That's a good one we'll dance to in the gym.
All right, what's the most annoying thing a teammate can do?
Ooh. That's hard because most of the time we have like our own lane, so well, I guess this is like kind of hypocritical of me because I definitely used to be this kid, but like when you're on my feet and warm up, like that's the most annoying thing. Like right when we jump in and they jump in like 5 seconds after me, I'm like, I need at least a 20-second gap between me and the next person so I can like take my time with it. But I used to do that too. I used to sprint warm up too, so
Yeah, he aged out of it. Good. It's good to see growth. It's good to see growth.
yeah.
Growth mindset.
What's the best swim that you've ever seen someone do live?
Oh, that's a good one. Oh,
You
I
got a lot to
mean,
choose from.
yeah, there's so many. I think watching Tori have the Olympics that she had was like literally insane. Like that was so cool to watch.
Mhm.
So that one comes to mind first.
All right, we did have several people ask us this. Charlotte Pelia, swimmer 97654. Everybody wants to know: are you going to swim in college or not? And if so, where?
Yes, I am swimming in college.
Okay. Do you know where?
I am still I I'm really excited about it. There's still things I am working through. So nothing I can share with you today, but I'm really excited about it.
All right, we
Cool.
know it's between McGill, Purdue, and Auburn, so just let us know when you figure out, okay?
I know people.
Yeah, we
All
can
right.
make a few phone calls for you.
Get you in.
All right. Last one on Sandpipers then. How often are we doing
Okay.
social kick?
Maybe like once every like 3 months, maybe.
Oh man, what do we need to do to
Like,
lobby Ron to get some more social
I
kick
don't
around there?
know. Well, the one time we social kick is during cooldown sometimes, but our 3 rules for cooldown are no stopping, no talking, no walking, like on the bottom of the pool. So that includes social kick, unfortunately. But we do find workarounds. We find workarounds for sure.
Like what?
Nice.
like talking during a kick set, even though it's like not social kick. Yeah.
Like I say,
because-
passing notes. New level of social kick.
We have walkie-talkies. No, I'm kidding, but yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, Katie, you're welcome back anytime. Thanks so
Thank
much for
you.
hanging out with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I appreciated it.
Awesome. That's it for this episode of Social Kick. We'll see you next time. See
All right, take care.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you're enjoying Social Kick, tell your friends about it. And be sure to tell us what you liked by leaving a comment and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Social Kick. And you can find all of our content on our website at thesocialkick.com.